Well, hopefully things will smooth out as I'm watching that. I may end up having to leave the stream and come back to restart the computer. I'm kind of shocked at the way that was pausing. Welcome to the Sutliffian Report. This week, I had a chance to interview Joe Kaufman about a recent article he wrote. I'm sorry I missed y'all last week. I was sick last week. And I don't want to miss talking about what Biden said last week, that America would take 100,000 refugees. Now, this is quite the topic we're going to get into with that. I have information. I'm not going to say it's all verifiable. I'm trying to get confirmed sources, but I'm going to share the information I have. And some of this should just blow your mind. We have to consider that Biden is in charge, and will he be taking Christian Ukrainians, or will Biden primarily do what he's done before and only take Muslim refugees? But this is a Christian news show, and we always start with the Word of God. Hebrews 2, verses 3-4. And I want you to think about this, because as I read this, there's nothing. I just was listening to a passage that was said by a Muslim, and they're just mocking. They're just mocking the concept of Christ. And we have to remember, Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. And that's what we have to throw back at them whenever they laugh at that. Hey, you're the ones who call him the Messiah. We have to throw that back at them. Do you know what it means? And I think that's all important. Now, let's get into Hebrews 2, verses 3-4. How shall we escape if we neglect so great salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord, and was confirmed unto us by them that heard him? God also bearing them witness, both with signs and wonders, and with diverse miracles, and gifts of the Holy Ghost according to his own will. This passage is nothing. This passage is part of that warning that J. Vernon McGee mentions. Think about this. What can you do to go to hell? What do you have to do? Nothing. What do you have to do to earn hell? Nothing. God sent his Son so that all may live and have eternal life. He offered his Son so that all may have this chance to become joint heirs with him. Think about it. But so few accept. What are they doing when they hear about the work of Christ? Nothing. They neglect the offer of salvation. But what is required to act on this offer that God presents? A simple acceptance, a belief. No vow to do this or that, no requirement to change who you are. God does this for you. All you have to do is to accept that God first loved you and that his son Jesus died on the cross for your sins. But to neglect this gift leaves you on a road to perdition, a road to hell forevermore. Jesus didn't come and simply just proclaim who he was. He did many miracles, so many that even those who did not think him to be the Son of God wrote about him doing miracles. He offered signs and wonders to those present, not in their time, but in his time. The greatest of all these miracles was the resurrection from the dead, his resurrection as well. Dear Lord Jesus, so many say no, neglecting the offer of salvation you put before them. Lord, help them to open their eyes, Lord, if even through this brief ministry, Lord, help them to find you. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, I have an incredible interview to share. Joe Kaufman's article that came out this week, it was too explosive for me not to share it. I saw this article and I was like, oh my gosh, we're exporting jihadis now. It's something to see when you start to look at that. We are exporting jihadis. Joe Kaufman wrote about the South Florida jihadis going to Israel. It caught my eye and I couldn't help. I have to share. So I called him and asked for him to be on the show. And he said he couldn't do it live, but he would do a canned interview. So that's what I have to share with you. Please let me know if the video is pausy. I will do what I can to fix that. This is just explosive. The information that he has to share. I think everybody needs to know this. Every Jew, every Christian needs to know this information. Every Israeli needs to know this information. This is scary stuff. To think that we as Americans are now exporting jihadis. And I have more than one case on this, but I don't know if we're going to have time to get into all of that because it just keeps coming up. Well, Joe is an expert in the field of national security, counterterrorism, and foreign affairs. Joe Kaufman. He's been featured on all the major networks, including Fox News, CNN, and the alphabet soup agencies that don't do much of anything, like MSNBC and CNBC and C-SPAN. Kaufman has served as a consultant to different government agencies, and he has been instrumental in getting U.S.-based terrorist charities shut down and terror-related individuals put in jail. You have to hear this interview. So here we go. I have to say, I'm very proud that this went so well. I think it will surprise you. And just got to pull the right one up here. And here we go. Hello, Mr. Kaufman. Your article, Dangerous Islamic Jihadist from U.S. Visits Florida, sent shivers down my spine. First of all, because of who Hatem Fariz is, and secondly, because of the push to bring lovers of Sharia to America under Obama and now Biden. Please tell those watching and listening what makes Hatem Fariz dangerous and why Israel should have just said no.
First of all, I that title, I don't know where they got that from, but it was I write for Front Page Magazine for the Harvard Freedom Center, and
that was in World Israel.
Yeah, I thought the original title was better. It was good. Florida Islamic Jihad in Israel.
I like that. I saw that too.
But because this is not the first time that I've written about this. It's actually the third time. So, because this keeps on happening for some reason. And why is this guy dangerous? It's very simple. The guy was involved in the in the terror network set up by Samuel Arian in the Temple Terrace, the subsidiary of Tampa Bay, Florida. They created a think tank, a charity, a children's school, and a mosque, all involved with Islamic Jihad. I think the mosque wasn't named in the indictment, but the other three were, including the children's school. This guy, I could read part of the indictment. I think it's important. So they wrote on here, Fariz was a PIJ member and did, quote, conspire to commit offenses against the United States by making and receiving contributions of funds, goods, and services to or for the benefit of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In the indictment, it discusses, things that they were raising money for, terrorist attacks that they were raising finances for, again, from Florida, not from Gaza or Ramallah. They were raising money from Tampa Bay, Florida, in order to commit terrorist attacks like suicide bombings. And this individual, he pled guilty to giving material support to Palestinian Islamic Jihad, very similar to the guilty plea of Sami al-Arian as well. Al-Arian was deported from the U.S. to Turkey, and Hatem Fariz, he served out a jail sentence. It was around 4 years, 3.5, 4 years. He pled guilty in 2006 and got out of prison in 2010, and is still involved with Islamic Jihad, I would say, because right after he was released from prison in 2010, it wasn't like 3 months later that he was hired as the managing director of the Islamic community of Tampa, the mosque, also known as the Al-Qassam Mosque, the mosque that was founded by Sami al-Arian. So right after he leaves prison, he gets this job as the managing director of the mosque. The mosque named for Al-Qassam. It was one of the main inspirations. It was an individual named Izzeddin Al-Qassam. He was one of the main inspirations for Palestinian Islamic Jihad. He was a jihadist himself, very well loved within the Palestinian community. You hear his name. He's named. There's Al-Qassam rockets. There's the Al-Qassam brigades. Many things within Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas are things named after this individual, and they named this mosque after him. And so, right after, not 3 months after he leaves prison, he becomes the head of this mosque. So he had a job essentially waiting for him after he left prison. And you could also see, when he's arrested, it looks like he has a smile on his face. I don't think he or any of the co-defendants were that unhappy about being arrested for this. I mean, if you think about the mindset of an individual that's raising money for things like suicide attacks, really acts of brutality that most people would consider, anathema to anything with regards to ethics or morality. You have to believe that these individuals have no problem with getting arrested, as in Israel. Um, same thing. Many times when these people are arrested, they have smiles on their faces. They have no problem with it. So he served. Uh, 3 or 4 years in prison. He comes out. He's got a decent job. He's now a living martyr for the community. That mosque is not a small mosque. That you look at that congregation. It's a very sizable congregation. You look at the children's school that was founded by Sami El-Arian. The mosque and the school still exists. The school is right next door to the mosque, and they just built a huge facility for the school. So they're it's not like when he was released. When somebody goes to prison for anything, but when somebody goes to prison and they come out, many times they'll be ostracized from the larger community. That people specifically won't want to befriend them any longer, just because maybe they have something to lose, maybe their livelihood, by being associated with someone from prison. This is something even worse than that. This is a guy that was raising money for terrorist activities overseas to murder people, and he comes out of prison, and right away he becomes the head of a mosque, and he's essentially the head of the mosque and the school. He has free reign in the school. There's much video and pictures of him, walking through the school, saying hi to the administrators. No problem with these children, massive amounts of children around him. And all these children are being, they're being brainwashed into this mindset, I believe, this mindset of intense hatred, but violent hatred of people that are different than them, and it's serious. And this is why he is dangerous. He's a dangerous individual.
And this is in the United States of America, in the state of Florida, not in Palestine.
Correct. He has a. I don't want to go too far off the subject, but he's had the police chief of Tampa taking photos with his and her arms around each other. The mayor of Tampa has written proclamations to events that he's been involved with. It seems like everybody's forgetting about the fact that this guy is a convicted member of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, one of the world's most brutal terrorist organizations.
Wow. And this was and your biggest concern when you wrote this, I mean, the point was to point out Israel should not have accepted this guy in. But on top of that, in your article, you point out this wasn't his first visit to Israel after getting out. And
No,
that just kind of blew my mind. I mean, this is a convicted member of the terror organization Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which has killed several Israelis.
His brother wrote in 2017 when he made his first trip into Israel since his arrest. He wrote something like 14 years. It's been a long 14 years, and he's finally back in. He called them like Abu Obeida. They have these nicknames for their children. So his son Obeida Fariz, the father takes the name of the son, and his brother called him Abu Obeida. They give them like a honor to use these terms. Is back is back in Palestine after 14 years. So he started going back actually in 2017. He started taking trips into Israel, and he's taken a number of them since then. And yes, he just was there in March, and he was there. He was just in there also before that in November 2021. So he's flying frequently. He's getting a lot of frequent flyer miles going to the Holy Land, and I find it very disturbing that he would be allowed in, and a number of the individuals that he's taking with him on these tours as well.
Wow, that's I'm gonna bring it up in a minute. This is when you think about this, at least when I thought of it, my first question is, does he have some special free pass to enter Israel? Because convicted terrorists generally don't get in.
It's a good question, because as I mentioned in the article, people with much lesser problems are frequently, routinely turned away for trying to get into Israel. There are Jews that are involved in like left-wing causes that is
Okay, well, it's apparent that Paul has lost his connectivity, and we apologize for that. Joe Kaufman, if you guys aren't aware of who Joe Kaufman is, this is the guy. This guy's from Florida. He's very popular in Florida, especially in the congressional district that he's from. So when we listen to, he's run for Congress a couple times down there, and he's a very authoritative figure, especially when it comes to national security issues. So it looks like we got Paul back. Well, we had Paul back. Is Paul back?
I have no idea what happened. It's still whatever it is. I'm using Ethernet, and it has me on Wi-Fi. Oh, now it's going. That is weird.
Okay, well, I was
Ethernet.
just using.
it picked up the Wi-Fi. That is just weird.
Oh, I thought it was me on my end, and then I come back in here into the office and sat down and got online on the computer, and you were gone when I logged in. So I just
That
started
doesn't
talking.
make
I was
any
like, okay.
sense why I would have Wi-Fi and not have Ethernet. I can't figure that out. All right, let me try and get back to this. I'm sorry. Sorry it dropped out, but I do have a lot more to cover. Basically, this story, which I consider extremely important, has to do with a jihadi getting into Israel. Now, this guy is leading a tour group into Israel. This is something to think about. How can you lead he meets with jihadis while he's there.
Okay, hold on. Okay, here's Paul. Are you saying this guy? Because in order to lead a tour group in Israel, you have to have Israeli citizenship. They don't allow people to just arbitrarily lead groups into Israel.
He has a tour group. He has a travel company out of his mosque in South Florida. And what he does is he uses it to visit friendly jihadis. And that's a lot of what I have as questions. I mean, how can you do that? I mean, it just does not make sense to me. How can you actually get in? And let me see if I can pull this back up, because it still blows my mind to think that was actually happening. I apologize for things freezing. Let me see if I can get us back to about where we were. I'm kind of mind blown. Kaufman, you're right. I think we're about halfway through. Come on. Don't fight with me again. All right. And it's fighting with me, and I have no idea why.
Okay, it looks like we lost Paul again. I don't know if he's logging out or logging back in. Hard to say. Anyway, I was just eating my supper too, by the way. Again, if you're talking about leading a tour group, this is where I'm kind of confused, because in order to lead a tour group, you have to be an Israeli citizen, or you at least have to provide give information on the different spots in Israel. You have to be licensed to do that. It sounds like this guy is just the leader or the owner of the tour company that's puts the tours together here in the United States, and then sends people over there and subcontracts out with Israeli tour guides. Does that sound about right, or am I off on this, Paul?
All I know is he leads he brings a bunch of people with him, and he visits other Hamas and PIJ people. And to me, that's pretty telling in itself. This is a man who does fundraisers, who got convicted of doing fundraisers for the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And they're letting him in. And that just... once you realize he's running Sami al-Arian's mosque. Now, Sami al-Arian is the South Florida jihadi that got deported to Turkey not too long ago. And, he's been hanging out in Qatar. He's been in, he's a very, very dangerous man when you think about it, because he was the head of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and he was doing it from a position as a professor at South Florida University. And that's something to, yeah, when you start to think about those things, it's just kind of mind numbing. And he spent his time in jail, got deported. This guy spent his time in jail, got deported. I'm going to see if I can, I was trying to check my history, pull it up. But this is the stuff that just got me. He's actually taking people in his travel group that's through his mosque to Israel. And I'm going to upload the video later so everybody can see it. wish I could explain what the technical issues are. I just know I'm having it only with StreamYard, which I find bizarre because usually it's Blog Talk Radio I have issues with. That just blows my mind. And my Wi-Fi still says no. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now we're back to the Ethernet. Okay. I have no idea what's going on here or what's causing the issues. All right. Sorry about that. So let's go on to this next topic. And I apologize for the technical issues. I will upload that video and you'll be able to see the entire thing later today. After the show's over, I'll just upload it. I wanted to split this into a few sections so I can put it up so you can watch just pieces of it if you want to later. This next piece that I want to talk about is, we're into the month of skipped lunch for the followers of Islam. It is also the month of insane acts of jihad. Now, keep this in mind. I sent Eric a video and I was hoping Critical could show up because I saw this video up on memory. And here we go. We're into another jihadi mosque. This is from the Boston Marathon Jihadi Mosque. This is where convicted terrorist Abdurrahman al-Amoudi, who schmoozed with President Clinton and President George W. Bush, where his mosque was. And this guy who is preaching out of here, his name is Imam Abdullah Farouk, is out of the Islamic Society of Boston. He says some what I consider very dangerous stuff. Now, the question I want you to think about as you listen to this, and I'm hoping to God this video works, and I have no idea what's causing this issue. I'm just going to shut down all my other, I'm going to hate myself later, but I'm going to shut down all the other tabs. Maybe that will help. All right. So let me try this. This next video is, to me, it's very, very short. And hopefully this will work.
And we're in America. We're not in Sudan. We're not in Afghanistan. We're not in places where women have the sense to cover themselves. We're not in Egypt. We're not in Morocco. We're not in Pakistan. We're not in India. We're in a place, in a land where disobedience to Almighty God is what is the norm. Disobedience is normal. Perversity is average. Men can marry men. Women can marry men. Oh, yes, true. That's women can marry men. That's good. Alhamdulillah. Women can marry women. This is a land in which anything is possible. If you don't like your gender, you can change it. You can chop it off, put it on. You can do anything you want. This is a terrible place.
Now, I want you to think about this in light of this concept of corruption in the land. Now, I'm going to read a passage, and I had it already set up. Now I've got to pull it back up. So just a second here and get the mouse back. I had it already set up, and we'll see if this actually works. Come on. I want to read a passage from the Quran, which is Quran Surah 5, verse 33. And if you don't get something to work one way, you basically try another way. That's what I've learned. And we'll try it this way. Okay. I'm going to share this screen here.
Hey, Paul, can you bring me up from backstage, please?
Oh, sorry. There you go. Is that where you want it? Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Sorry. I had two of you there. Sorry about that. All right. And let's see. I want to share my screen. I want you to think about that passage, because my problem with this passage is, are they talking about corruption in the land? And if they are, there is a huge penalty. Here we go. All right. So this comes from Quran 5:33, and I wanted to go down. I'm taking this from Islam Awakened, and let's go to the word for word. It says, only the recompense for those who wage war against Allah and his messengers and strive in the earth, spreading corruption, is that they be killed, or they be crucified, or cut off their hands or their feet of the opposite sides, or they be exiled from the land. That is for them disgrace in the world, and for them in the hereafter is a punishment great. I'm almost questioning, since this speech was given during Ramadan, is this a statement? Let me just grow this so everybody can see it a little bit more clear. Sorry about that. And do I need to make it bigger? Or is that big enough? All right, just make it just a hair bigger.
That's perfect. You can read it. I don't know. I'm not on my phone. If you're on your phone, it might be difficult.
Okay. My biggest issue here, this is given during Ramadan. Is this a statement opening, as a statement for jihad? Now, you have to understand that the other reason why I'm asking this is Hamas and several terror organizations have declared, which they do every jihad, every Ramadan month they make a statement saying, okay, we're going to come get you. We're going to attack you. This is going to be our month of warfare. But this is the beginning of Ramadan, and here we are in the States. Are they making a blanket statement to attack America because they're considering this corruption in the land? Corruption in the land, again, has a punishment of death. So it makes you think. You just have to sit there and wonder. Do you have any comments on that, Eric or Sapphire, if you'd like?
What, as far as the passage is concerned?
Yeah.
Well, of course. Okay, here you have the God of the universe prescribing crucifixion as a form of punishment. The most cruel thing that you can do to another human being, one of the most cruel things, but this is top 5 stuff here, is to crucify somebody and to watch them languish on a cross for days on end as a punishment for what? Well, for corruption. Well, what is corruption? Well, you really don't get a good definition of what corruption is ever. It is whatever some mullah, sheikh, or whoever decides that it's going to be. A corruption would be, for example, me going to Mecca and preaching the gospel of Christ. That would be considered a corruption in the land. Or you could go with that imam out of Houston, Texas, and he says, by doing my show, or doing this, what we do here, is also called a corruption in the land. So if the prescription for committing corruption in the land is crucifixion, doing this is, well, a punishment for doing what we do here. We could be crucified for this. So yeah, this is the most arbitrary applied term in all of Islam. Now, what's beautiful about this is you go to the verse right before it in 532. And this is the one. This is the one that Muslims love to quote. You can go to it, but this is the one that Muslims love to quote. They say, "Oh, if any man kills another, he's killed all mankind, and if he saves a life, it's like as if he saved all mankind." That is right before this verse 533. So the Muslims want to take you to 532. Of course, they take it out of context because they always leave out from that time, that we ordained the children of Israel, and then they leave that part out, and they begin with that he who kills the soul, and that's what they begin with. So you have supposedly the most peaceful verse in all of the Quran, preceding one of the most vile and disgusting verses in all of the Quran, when it prescribes crucifixion, cutting your hand off and your a foot off on opposite sides.
And this peaceful verse is only about the children of Israel.
Right. This has, yeah. Well, they always, but see, that's the thing. That, yeah, you're right. For we have ordained for the children of Israel that if any man, okay, that it, but they never quote that part though, because they want you to think that Islam is a peaceful religion.
Yeah.
So they leave that part out, take it out of context, and then completely ignore what follows. Now, forget the fact that this 532 is almost a verbatim plagiarism of Midrash Sanhedrin 4.5. Forget that little fact. But
no, they don't want you to know those things.
No, because it was written by a Jew. We find more rabbis writing in the Quran than it's just about anybody else.
I had another passage that I just kind of fearful to pull things up. I don't know why things are pausy for me today. I apologize for that. The joy of this is the first time I've had an issue like this with StreamYard and not with BTR. I'm kind of shocked when I think about this. There was another passage that I had that I wanted to pull up that has to do with this. And we link about corruption in the land. What are we thinking about? And is this a call? Again, this is my concern. You have to remember, this was at a mosque. This is the Boston Marathon Bombers Mosque that this is being said. This is, let's see, 564 is what I was trying to get at. Yeah, the other passage here. Let me just get to that. 5, and that's the joy. It's easy to fix because the way this is done. 64. All right, so I'm going to pull that up and share it. And here we go. And 564, just pull down. And I went the wrong direction. Okay. 564. All right. And this says, Andy said, the Jews' hand, Allah's is chained, are chained in their hands. I can make sense of that. And they've been cursed for what they said. Nay, his hands are stretched out. He spends how he wills, and surely increase many of them what has been revealed to you from your Lord in rebellion and disbelief. Now they have just said in the Islamic Society of Boston, basically that we are in rebellion to Allah, and we are casting enmity and hatred against Allah. This is what I want you to understand. And every time they kindle the fire of the war, extinguish Allah, how do they do that? Jihad. And they strive in the earth, spreading corruption. Again, Allah doesn't love the corruptors. But that verse 33 told us the penalty is death, including crucifixion as the penalty. So this is something to think about. Was he calling for an act of warfare against? This is something national security guys should be asking questions about. And I don't see them asking. And we can thank President George W. Bush for that. There's nobody who is more responsible for this ineptitude than George W. Bush. It's not Obama. It is President George W. Bush, because he made it a policy that Islam could not be considered an enemy. And I do not blame Obama for that, because that is, when you study intelligence analysis, you learn that became a policy. And that is owed to George W. for making that statement.
I don't think he prohibited people from. Bush didn't prohibit people from looking at the root causes of. Yes,
he did. That statement caused that. It became a policy.
Which statement? That
Islam is not our enemy. Forbid any. It actually forbid any and all intelligence analysts of looking at Islam as the problem. Yeah, when you study
offline about it.
Yeah, that's
I tend to disagree, because
I would have disagreed, but when I took my classes, I was just kind of
right.
Yeah, I from the point of view of intelligence analysis, they took it as a policy, and that kind of blew my mind because that's what my instructors actually taught me, and kind of blew my mind. I'm like, how could you guys not know this? And it explains a little bit more, unfortunately. Now, I said that now Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas have made all these declarations of violence. And with that said, let me pull up this article. CBS News even covered an article of violence. There was violence in Israel today. Now, I don't know how many people are aware of this, but it came out when I was doing my prep for the show. This article came out today, 6:30 today. Not sorry, 6:30. This is the update. It was about 4 o'clock today. This came out. Come on. An attacker opened fire in a crowded restaurant district in central Tel Aviv today, killing at least 2 people and wounding several others before fleeing into a dense residential area. Police said there were indications it was, quote, politically motivated. What? Yeah. They were if followers of Islam. The 4th deadly attack in Israel in less than 3 weeks, at a time heightened Israeli-Palestinian tensions. Well, why is that? Because it's Ramadan. The militant Hamas group that rules the Gaza Strip praised the attack, but did not claim responsibility. Hours after the shooting, the suspected gunman remained at large. Hundreds of Israeli police officers, K-9 units, and Army Special Forces were conducting a massive manhunt in central Tel Aviv, searching building by building through the densely populated residential neighborhoods. Amichai Eshel, the Tel Aviv police commander, said the shooter opened fire into a crowded bar at around 9 p.m. and then fled. Our working assumption is that he's still in the vicinity. He told reporters, as of right now, there's indications pointing to this being a terror attack, but I have to be very delicate. He said, we're also checking other leads. Now, this is... again, this is, you don't usually hear about open declarations of jihad except from terrorist groups. And just the concept is rather disgusting when you start to think about it. What's going on here is we have jihadis openly declaring Ramadan is a month of war. And we've seen this over and over again. We call it Ramadan Bamathon. You can go to the Religion of Peace. I didn't even go that today to double check. religionofpeace.com.
I'm just reading it up right now. Before you said something, I was already going there.
And the funny thing, I hate to say that, it's not funny, but it's a sick, humorous thing is that we expect more attacks during Ramadan. They seem to think this is the month to kill, so they get special benefits. You get maybe you get more reward. Well, the truth is, if they actually read the Quran, all Muslims go to hell. All Muslims go to hell, even those who get to get their houris, their disgusting alien wives. 72 virgins, they said. These are aliens. You can see through their skin and see their bones. That's just the kind of thing you want to see when you're going to make love to someone, right? And that's what they're getting. And when you read the hadiths about these 72 virgins that they're describing, these are the houris. They are not human. The description is not of a human. And that's important to understand. And then it gets better. You're supposed to get 72, but it sounds like you're supposed to be giving away 70. So pay attention, Muslims, who followers of Islam. Take a good look at what it says about houri. Read the hadiths. Read the sunnah. You really need, if you really believe that, you need to look at what you're getting. Because you can't tell
Aladdin in the chat.
Oh, the guy with not much intelligence. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to. This is the sad thing. Aladdin just doesn't understand life. It's a very sad truth. he likes to make things up, and you know what? We're going to stick to what the scriptures say, and he can't do that. So let's keep going on.
What did you say about him before? There was third grade something.
Third grade, he has that third grade reading comprehension because it's not fourth grade.
Right.
You know, no matter how many times we tell Aladdin something, he can't process it quick enough to comprehend. As a special ed teacher, you know, that was part of my job, was to look at disabilities, and you know, and as far as reading comprehension, how many times do you have to tell somebody something before they get it? And this guy can't even tell the truth on his own stuff, which is kind of hilarious.
Well,
by the way, I
would want to be generous and say maybe it's because English is not his primary language, and maybe he just doesn't understand it in English. But then when he reads stuff in the Arabic and then translates it, that just tells me everything I need to know. Not only do you read at a third grade level in English, but you also in a couple other languages that he doesn't speak. Hey, I wanted to give you the stats on the Bombathon for the month, if you don't mind.
Okay, please do.
Okay, the Ramadan Bombathon for 2022, they're on day 6. Terror in the name of Islam, 15 attacks and 107 people killed. All other religions combined, 0 attacks, 0 kills, and attacks by right-wing or anti-Muslim extremists, 0 attacks, and of course 0 people killed. So we are being outdone once again. We get massacred. All of us anti-Muslim people get massacred during the Ramadan Bombathon.
And this is what Aladdin wants. He's actually come out on his show, and you know, he's a purveyor of hate. I mean, he's okay with people being killed during Ramadan, and he's talking about free Palestine. He wants to see every Jew killed, which is sad.
We just spent Sunday discussing that and the type of people that this breeds, and we showed that video from memory. Those little kids, for crying out, they're teaching their little kids. And you know, I can understand, you know, if you're a freedom fighter and you know you hate your oppressor, and I could understand you wanting to kill your oppressor. But these guys are doing it in the name of religion, and that's what is really troubling for me. If you feel that the Israelis are oppressing, which they are not, but let's pretend, okay, let's live in your little world. Let's pretend that they are. But to sit there and train your kids religiously, saying that you are sanctioned by God to go kill another religious group, that is a special kind of sick.
Well, on top of that, you know, what's really the truth here is that Israel has given more free things to the followers of Islam than they could ever dream. They provide medical treatment for the leaders, not only the leaders of these terror groups, Yasser Arafat and his family, and you can talk about all these other PIJ and other places that have needed medical treatment or help. Who takes care of them? Oh, they don't want their own people to take care of them, so they go to Israel and have the Jewish doctors take care of them. Well, Aladdin can't say anything about that because that's actually factual. And you know, this is the
Aladdin
truth.
wants to be treated by Zakir Knight because Zakir Knight's a medical doctor after all.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd like the camel urine treatment. Get the warmest you can while you're at it. And by the way, if you think Dr. Knight is a real doctor, I'd love for you to pay close attention to his definition of what was the right word here? He doesn't understand what an antibiotic is. So, and this man is a medical doctor.
Well, what do you mean he doesn't understand what an antibiotic is? What did he say?
So he was talking about a vaccine and his definition of a vaccine and what it was. And I had a good laugh because this man is so scary. He couldn't understand the purpose of a vaccine. And he equated it to not jumping off a building and getting a broken bone.
I think I've seen that. I just can't remember exactly how it goes, but yeah, the guy's a joke.
Yeah.
Theologically, medically, however you want to cut that pie, he's a joke. And he's also a tax evader too, by the way.
That's why he's in hiding somewhat.
Right, yeah.
And and he's also wanted for other countries for relations to terrorism.
Right.
And this is, this is their best intellectual. I always have a good laugh because the students who go up and ask him questions, and the people who will post his answers, you sit there and laugh at because they're not intellectual responses. And he proves himself wrong so many times. Hey, Rad, thank you for joining us.
There he is.
And
he's got the wheel of death.
Oh,
I spoke to
don't
Rad
feel
last
bad.
night.
I've been in that land today.
You want to talk about quality entertainment? Is call Rad up sometime and just have a conversation with the guy.
Oh, we talk a lot.
He makes you. I know he just makes you laugh out loud.
Oh no, critical. I'm sorry, critical. I do. Rad, I'd love to, sit and pick. I have a source today that I think Rad would be. I want to. Rad will probably have the best information. I actually wrote to Claire to see if it's accurate. And I'm just going to double check and see if she responded to my email real quick. I'm still going to share the information, and she did not respond.
Well, what Rad what he'll do is when I call him, he's riding the train home. He goes, "Dude, there's somebody sitting next to me, and I'm touching them." So here he's on the phone and he's talking to these people, and they can hear what he's saying. And you have to, with the way he talks too, with his inflection of voice.
Oh, where'd Rad go?
He dropped off because he needs a new phone.
Aladdin, I'm sad for you that you had to run to another country to go get your jihadi wage. So you're getting your jizya, but you don't earn your own money, is what I'm guessing. So I'm guessing that's part of the reason why why you're having needs. You talk about the West Bank, but you won't live there. You're funny. Aladdin can't put up, so he must shut up. Aladdin, the sad story. So this other section I wanted to get into today. I wrote one of the things that made me a federally recognized expert on civilization jihad. Now, for those who live in Aladdin's world, which is the UK and Europe, this is Islamization. Now, Europe really understands what that is. But what I did was I wrote an affidavit on refugees, the real cost of refugees. Now, I'm only talking about the cost here in the United States. I'm not talking about it in other terms. And we're going to get into that. So what I'm going to share with you is a PowerPoint on this topic. And this is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart because as someone who has
Paul, did you mute yourself? Let me jump back over here. Sorry. Did you mute yourself, Paul? I cannot hear you. Cannot hear you. Cannot hear you. Try taking the monitor. Oh, that's okay. That's Darcy. Try taking the monitor and shake it a couple times. That works for me.
Can you guys hear me?
Rad. I can hear the Rad now.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Paul's
loud
going to jump
and clear.
off. He's going to come back out here in just a second. I was just getting ready to say. So you on your train?
I got it working.
Yeah.
Yep, I made the early train. I think I got it working.
Oh my gosh, you look civilized.
Oh, kind of.
That's the work in you.
Yeah.
Maybe you should say something to the effect that, would you guys hold it down here? I'm on an I'm on an Islamophobic show or something like that.
Right, wait, am I in the quiet car?
I don't know. Are you?
No, not the quiet car.
Is this the car? Is there a difference? I mean, is the car that you can shout in and be generally boisterous, or?
Yeah, pretty much. But everybody's quiet here. They're going to yell at me. Plus, I'm not wearing a mask.
I was going to address our friend Mr. Aladdin over here in the chat, saying, yeah, he's spamming XYZ. What was he saying? He was saying something about Palestine, free Palestine. Just so you know, that way you're not disappointed. Is that the Jews are never going away? That is just a fact of life. God made a covenant with the Jews to give them that land. He didn't make it with the Muslims. He made it with the Jews. He made it with Abraham. He established a covenant with Moses. He established a covenant with David. And he's established a new covenant with all of us through his son, Jesus Christ. The Jews have been miraculously put back in their homeland through whatever the Holocaust was, the price that they paid in the Holocaust to gain some type of semblance of sympathy from the world community to recognize them as a nation. But the fact is that they are never going to leave that land, no matter how much you wish they would. And if you would go there and you would compare what it looks like on the West Bank and compare that to Israel proper, it's like the difference between night and day, how they treat the land. The Jews have turned it into an oasis of produce, growing dates, vegetables, fruit, and to the point where they're the number one exporter of fruit to Europe. But yet, people in the West Bank have that same capability to do that, but they don't. So to try to say that the Jews are going to be somehow moved off their land is a fantasy only inspired by a book that causes people to want to kill other people based on their religion. So you go ahead and sit there and try saying all you want about the Jews leaving Israel. They're never going to leave. What's that, Darcy? I didn't hear you.
Right. Oh, Brad's backstage, but he's going to have to wait till Paul comes back.
Yeah, I don't know. Paul's probably rebooting. He's probably had enough of tinkering around. He's been having problems the entire show. Even at the beginning of the show, you saw that it was phasing in and out, and he didn't get to complete that interview that he wanted to do or wanted to air with Joe Kaufman. I'm amazed that because what Kaufman was talking about is that you have a guy that runs a tour company and sponsors trips to Israel, but yet is a convicted jihadist of some sort. How does that work out? And I mean, how do these people even gain visas into Israel? It makes the Mossad, maybe the Mossad knows something that we don't, and I'm hoping that that's the case.
Well, it's like was prophesied. Good shall be called evil, and evil shall be called good in the end days.
Well, that's exactly what we're seeing today. Yeah, absolutely right. That's exactly what we're seeing today. Where it's gotten to the point, and I noticed this, was it last year, where you have Gay Pride Month. Not only, I mean, we have to have a month of this, really. And we're supposed to celebrate homosexuality. What country celebrates something so deviant, so up in your face, sinful to God? And to celebrate that, I mean, not because if you look at the pattern here, what the pattern was is because in the early 70s, the board that sits on that sits on the people who published the DSM, the thing that diagnoses mental psychosis or mental illnesses. Okay, the DSM, the board that did that had, I think there were 7. I can't remember what the numbers were. I wrote a paper on this a long time ago, where they got a majority of the people that sat on the board were homosexuals. So they took homosexual behavior out of the DSM. So now medical or psychiatrists, I can't remember what the difference is between the two, but it doesn't matter, can no longer give, what's that called, where they provide therapy to keep you from being a homosexual. I can't remember what the type of therapy is called again, but they can't even do that because the insurance won't pay it, because I mean, people are just that way. So it's gotten to the point where they took it out of the DSM, and then we were told, well, what we do in our bedroom is nobody else's business. Conversion therapy. Thank you, Rad's on it. Conversion therapy. They told us, well, what we do in our bedrooms is our business. And people are like, yeah, maybe you got a point. We shouldn't be telling you can't be doing those type of nasty things to each other in your bedroom. If you got 2 consenting adults and they want to do that to each other, okay, fine, have at it, but don't let us know about it. Then it got to the point where if they did that and you looked at them sideways, like, I think you're kind of sick for doing, you'd say something like that, now you're a phobe, a homophobe. Islam has used that term to call people Islamophobe. That's how that all came about. And then if you looked at the military, and I was in the military when Bill Clinton came up with that don't ask, don't tell policy, that initial policy that started allowing homosexuals to serve in the military, but you could not serve openly. That was, I see that Paul's trying to get back in. You could not serve openly. And then it went from don't ask, don't tell to don't harass and don't pursue, because even though you were allowed to get in the military, you weren't not supposed to be engaging in homosexual behavior. Well, then commanders were finding out that these guys were doing the dirty in their own barracks. They're saying, no, we're not going to. And so they would force these guys out of the military for doing that. Well, it got to the point where you could not harass or pursue them. And then it's gotten to the point now where then it went to where they could serve openly, be openly homosexual. And now they're married. They can get married in military chapels, and you have people on military installations hanging out together, holding hands together. What's that mean, Rad? No way. Yeah, way. Yeah. So now, and if you say something about it, now you're the bad guy. You're the one that could be brought up on some type of what do they call those? Equal opportunity charges. So you just it's gotten to the point where it's just Sodom and Gomorrah. So calling evil good and good evil is exactly the sign of the time. I wholeheartely agree with that. And homosexuality is just one of those things. Abortion is another hot. Well, I don't call it a hot button issue, but it is one of those issues that you can always take the pulse of the country and how they view the unborn. And we've gotten to the point in this country where I believe, from what I've seen, it's gotten to the point where people are waking up to the fact of what really goes on in these abortion clinics.
Yeah, Aladdin wants to come on, and so he can teach you something.
Aladdin, Eric, I'll join you live so we can have some fun to school you. I tell you what, Aladdin, once you come to my show next Tuesday, if you can be on a show at this time of day, because you always tell me that you can't ever come to the show because, well, I sleep and I'm in bed at that time. Okay, fine. Okay, you can't come on Sundays. You come to my show next Tuesday and you come school me on whatever topic that you think that you see fit. I think the last time we had a conversation, it was on the crucifixion. I think I would like to continue that with you, if you don't mind.
He wants to hear now.
Oh, he does. Well, I don't have this ain't my show, so I can't.
Right. Well, Elodine, just stop.
Yeah, we can do it now here. Well, let it let him say whatever he wants. He's going to show me. Okay, why don't you tell me a little bit about the history of Israel and how the Palestinians have a right to that land? Why don't you go ahead and explain that one to me? Go ahead and explain that in the chat for me. We can do it here now.
Well, it's like Paul keeps saying, we gotta, take it real slow. So Elodine keeps caught up with what
Paul
we're saying.
Paul just Skyped me and says he's having a fight with his microphone. Yeah, if he wants to have if you want to have a conversation about who has a right to that land, okay. And we can, I tell you what, we'll even use the Quran. How's that? Yeah, you school me. Well, I don't know what to talk about now. Paul's not here.
StreamYard link or...
It's what?
I don't know if you could put in the StreamYard link in the chat or... But Elodine, this is Paul's show.
See, even if I could, I couldn't bring him on because I don't have control of the studio. If I had control of the studio, if you said Rad's sitting there, that's it. Rad hit it on the head. It's Ramadan, so all the Muslims are up after dark. They have a new sleeping schedule. Yes. Did not think of that. That is so true. Is he saying anything else? I suggest you ask Jew Nuturi about. I don't know who Jew Nuturi Carta is. Why don't you ask whoever that is?
Talking about Bibi?
Who?
Maybe Bibi. I can't pronounce the last name.
Netanyahu?
That could be. I don't know.
Don't know. It's hard to say what, because here's the guy that he's full of so many facts. He throws so many facts out there that just aren't true, and he acts as if they are, and then builds his entire argument on things that aren't true. So let's see here. I see Ask Orthodox Jew about Israel. Look them up on YouTube. No, it's okay. I can figure. You could ask. I mean, you can find anybody that'll speak out against their country against Zionism. I mean, you could people in the United States. Oh, ask that American there, and he'll speak out about his president, President Biden. So he must really know because he's an American, don't you see? That's about as shallow answer as you can get. But coming from Aladdin, you don't expect much depth to these answers either. Is the rock he kissed? Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, and I don't know if you're going to be coming on Critical. As soon as Paul gets his act together up there and finally get it to work, and I'm stuck backstage. I know, Rad, stuck backstage, and I don't have the ability to bring you on. I'm sorry. I wish I did. You see, Paul is MIA. Okay, so he's telling me that this is a Jewish group based in the UK, anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian. Yep. Well, like I said, you can get anybody to hate their own people. Anytime. I mean, you can get people out there to hate. I mean, you get Muslims out there that hate their religion. Oh wait,
right.
Yeah, because if they say they do, then they get their heads lopped off. So that's kind of a dangerous thing to do. But you have ex-Muslims go out there and talk all day about the religion. I just want to know how the Palestinians have a right to that land today, 2022. I'm not. Yeah, it sounds like Quizlings, XYZ. You're absolutely right. Yes, sir. Yeah, because we did a whole show on this on Sunday, and the reason why I do that is because I found out that I'm going to be going back to Israel, not Palestine. I'm going to be going back to Israel in a couple months, and when we go, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the security situation there, and how things are set up and how the Jews are basically surrounded by enemies and people who hate them that want to just walk down the street and nilly-willy open up shooting into a bar like they did tonight, obviously.
That's so sad.
Okay.
Finally back.
Welcome back, Paul.
Oh, I
Paul
apologize.
is-
I've only had this. I don't know what it is with this mic issue. It's just really bizarre. I wish I could comprehend what's happening because I can't fix it if I can't comprehend what's happening.
Well, we can hear you loud and clear now. That's for sure.
I didn't do anything. All I did was shut it down and start again. That's the thing that bothers me.
The real question is, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
You have a lot of background noise, Rad.
Okay, I'm in a train.
Oh, I guess I guess that explains it, huh?
Thank you for all being patient. I'm going to share my screen and get into the real cost of refugees, which I'm not going to address.
Just to let you know, Rad, just to let, or not Rad, Paul, just to let you know,
Yeah.
Aladdin is he's in the chat and he said he wants to come on and talk about who has a right to the Holy Land, evidently.
Well,
No, he said he's going to work now.
Because if he could read his own Quran, he would realize that Jerusalem's not even mentioned in there. So that's up to him. He's got to read from his own Quran first, and until he gets educated on that, I'm not going to bother with him because I don't like to debate people who have that slow processing skill.
Okay, well let me just tell him then okay, you can come to my show on Tuesday, and you can come waste my time. All right, Paul.
All right. So we're going to get into the real cost of refugees. And this is for all refugees. It's not just Islam. It's not just anything. This is the real cost of refugees. And this is something to think about. I mean, when we talk about refugees, you talk about the expenses for housing, living, learning, English, schooling, and more. In the United States, they tell you it's all provided by federal dollars. That is a lie from the pit of hell. Okay, let me just get over here. All right. So the reason I started this topic up is last week, somebody wrote for our president Dementia. He's making him say, today I announced that the United States will welcome up to 100,000 Ukrainians and others fleeing Russia's aggression. You want to think about this. That will bring us up to close to 300,000 migrants within 1 year. That is almost back to Civil War era of pushing people into the country. That's how far back. I mean, it's a phenomenal, maybe World War II. I don't think we were even that high then. I could be wrong. I think we were more secure back then. But this amount of refugees is just, it's not sustainable. Financially, it's not sustainable. All right. I'm going to make this larger just because I can't get my mouse back over here. All right. Come on. All right. So the real cost of refugees. The Refugee Act of 1980 explicitly forbids the immigration of those who have committed persecutory acts on others. Now, the reason I want to bring this out is some of the information I'm going to bring in later. In order for a person to qualify, they can't have committed any persecution. This is extremely important to think about. When we talked about the Syrians coming here, we couldn't tell if they had persecuted or engaged in terrorist acts when they came here. So that's a big thing. Now we're talking about the Ukrainians, and believe it or not, that is a big issue. And I'm going to talk about some of those things that I found. So again, this is a huge issue. The term refugee does not include any person who ordered, incited, assisted or otherwise participated in the persecution of any person on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion. So this would disqualify Al-Din, okay, because he's okay with persecuting Jews and he's willing to take part in that. So that would disqualify Al-Din from coming to the United States as a refugee. The Refugee Resettlement Program started under President Jimmy Carter through the passing of the Refugee Act of 1980. Now, some people want to credit this to Ronald Reagan. I believe this was signed before Ronald Reagan took office. So I want you to think about that. Any person, this act defines any person who is outside of any country of such person's nationality, or in the case of a person. Now, think about this. That would make all of the Afghanistan people who were coming to the United States on our planes, they took them here without them becoming refugees. That's a violation of our code. So technically, we made them refugees. So technically, they don't qualify for refugee status. This is extremely important to grasp. This is why this is why they're staying on these army bases, because they technically do not qualify as refugees, so they can't be financed as refugees. All right, any person, again, this is any person who is outside of a country, such person's nationality in the case of a person having no nationality is outside any country in which such person last habitually resided and who is unable to or unwilling to return to and is unable or unwilling to avail himself or of the protection of that country because of persecution or a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group or political opinion. This 1980 definition of a refugee is basically any person who is outside of their home country, who is unable or unwilling to return because of persecution or well-founded fear. These are extremely important to think about. Okay, let me just go to the next slide here. All right. So today, those labeled as refugees are selected. Here's where we get into trouble. And defined not by the American government, but by the United Nations. This brings into question whether those labeled as refugees do indeed meet the three criteria listed, simply because the UN officially designates those who have lived in Palestinian-controlled zones in Israel all their lives. When they've lived there all their lives, born there and everything, they're calling them refugees. Been there for generations. And this violates the United States definition of refugee and is extremely problematic. So my request of our government is that we remove the UN from the process. And this is extremely important because their definition of refugee does not work with our definition. It's problematic. All right. So what do we know about Ukraine? Their government was and is corrupt. We know that the Nazis sought and found shelter in the Ukraine. Now, I got this from a 1992 report, and I found this rather interesting. So in 1992, that's 30 years ago. Kind of doesn't seem that long ago, but 30 years ago. There are between 11 and 12 million ethnic Russians in Ukraine, including, again, 1992. Approximately 1.5 million who live in the Crimean Peninsula. The Crimea is the only area of the Ukraine in which Russians constitute the majority, about 2/3 of the population. Now, this, again, 1992, this was written. Uncaptive Minds, this came from. Uncaptive Minds indicates that several outbursts of anti-Russian sentiment occurred in the days before the December 1st, 1992 referendum on independence. However, a majority of Russians in Ukraine voted in support of the referendum. Please find attached articles. Okay, so here's the thing to think about. The people in this area wanted their part of the Ukraine to be Russian. And this, again, is in 1992. Correspondent, they were also saying that here that the western regions of the Ukraine, except for the western regions of the Ukraine, most Ukrainians spoke Russian. And there are several cultural similarities. Now, it's hard to find this stuff now. Let me tell you why. Unless you're using a European search engine, Google and many other search engines block you from finding this information. Believe me, I have been looking. I have been looking and looking and looking, and it bothers me that it's so hard to find this stuff. Now, since Russia invaded the Crimea, there's been an ongoing culture war between the Ukraine and Russia. Russia will forbid other languages than Russian being taught. And then Ukraine gives out a rule saying, oh, you can't teach Russian. So these are just point out culture wars. And this is what you have to look at behind the scene. Some people consider this, no matter how you look at it, either side, preparation for genocide. They consider it a step towards genocide. And
genocide of who, though? Of the
That's
Ukrainians or the Russians?
Well, the article I originally read that called it a step towards genocide is a more Russian-friendly perspective. They considered the Ukrainians willing to and working on wiping out the Russians is what they were saying. So some of this stuff that I found, which, like I said, I'm hoping somebody can verify some of this, but all right. Here's where I'm getting at. Can Ukrainians qualify as refugees to America? Now, this is what surprised me. Researchers for the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, outlined the serious crimes that have been taking place in the Donbass or eastern region of the Ukraine. The Ukrainian army has been shelling the cities of the DPR and LPR for 8 years. Okay. Shelling of a nursing home in Longzak. This happened July 28th of 2014, where many elderly patients were killed. The report I saw on this had many vivid pictures. From 2014 to 2021, the Ukrainian military had killed over 150 children and wounded countless more. This is actually a memorial that is placed there for those children. Again, in 2021, the ambassador of Ukraine in Berlin, Andriy Melnik, said on a German radio station that Ukraine needed to regain its nuclear status if the country could not join NATO. We happen to know that there was no chance for them to join NATO. And this is where things are going to get truly interesting. One of my biggest questions about this entire Ukrainian conflict, Russian-Ukrainian conflict, war, has been, why did Russia go through Chernobyl? You're about to find out why. I just this kind of blew my mind.
Yes, I would like to know that because that made absolutely no sense. No sense whatsoever.
I'm sorry?
So that makes no sense. They went to Chernobyl and made a big deal of taking the red zone area. I mean,
So
it
now-
absolutely made no sense.
Yeah. So this is why I'm starting to figure it out because of what I've been reading. Again, we have to consider, can Ukrainians qualify? They're talking about taking 100,000 Ukrainians here. Can they qualify? Now, pay close attention to this one. It says, according to the Russian nuclear physicist Alexander Borodov, Ukraine is capable of creating a dirty atomic bomb using the existing capacities, the material for which can serve as spent nuclear fuel or nuclear power plants that exist in Ukraine. If true, this alone. See, now they have designated Chernobyl as a special government project, basically. And this is the part that makes me start to understand them going through Chernobyl first. Were they looking to stop a possible creation of a dirty bomb? And as much as I don't want to believe it, that would explain going through Chernobyl first. I had thought about that.
Well, okay, hold on. Can you back up on that, Paul?
Yes.
Okay, why go through? I mean, this guy looks like he spent a little too much time in Chernobyl to begin with.
This is one of the best pictures I could find of him.
Right. Okay. Well. Okay. So explain to me why. Okay. Why go through Chernobyl? Are you saying that there's still unspent nuclear fuel there?
Chernobyl was still being used as in the 1990s. They started using Chernobyl again. They had 3 reactors active. They shut them down one at a time, but
who's
this is only recently.
Recently, okay.
And I'm talking about within the past few years, they shut the last one down. However, in doing that, they actually designated one of them, I mean, the Chernobyl site, as a special project for the state. The way it's written, it looks like it's a military project. So I'm not the expert on Russia, but that would make, and the Ukraine, but that would make me extremely curious.
Okay, so your argument is that the reason why they went through Chernobyl is to prevent the Ukrainians from getting their hands on the fissile material, the spent rods or whatever, and you making a dirty bomb with that. Is that
that's what
the Russians wanted to prevent that? That's okay. That's okay.
That's what this information looks like. It's again this stuff. I would not have found this if I'm strictly using European search engines, and you cannot find it through Google. Now I'm going to send anybody who I can't verify. This actually is a document that was sent to that company, sent to that organization, and I'm going to go back. I'll go back and share that again. That's from the OSCE. This is researchers who wrote this document. I do find it very favorable towards Russia. And I'm not saying it's not Russian influenced. However, what I am saying is some of these things can be verified because I did look at other non-Russian sources and found some of these things verified. So I'm very, very concerned when I see this. This guy may look a little bug-eyed, but maybe he has reason to be concerned. I'm going to leave that there. Now let's talk about the actual financial cost to American taxpayers, because the cost of refugees, again, if they get to come here and they are allowed, and I'm going to, I guess Rad is back. I'm going to put him back in. All right. If they get to come here, your actual federal tax dollars that get spent are very, very small. And this is what should concern you. The federal government requires each state to design and lay out their plan for the refugee resettlement program that they're taking part. These plans provide cash, medical, and any other emergency assistance needed by the individuals eligible for the refugee resettlement services in order for them to obtain, quote, adequate, keep this in mind, adequate living conditions. By the way, they said adequate living conditions. You know who pays for their place to live? It's not the federal tax dollar. It's your state welfare.
Right.
Okay. Now it gets better. Now, you see these terms down here? Refugee cash assistance, temporary assistance for needy families. 10th is the only one that they share. Family independence, refugee medical assistance, refugee social services. This is what gets important to understand, that these terms, these are allotments in addition to your state's welfare program. So who's going to pay the price for these 100,000 refugees from wherever they're coming from? For each individual refugee that comes here, this is your state, local taxes that pay for the vast majority of it. The federal dollars go towards, here's where they go towards, your agencies. The vast majority of that money goes towards the agencies that bring them in. They get paid per refugee. That's why they're always recruiting the government to bring more in. So you can't trust. This is the scary thing. And they actually take on day one when a refugee comes to the United States, day one, when they get off that plane, they take them to your local state welfare office. They get them IDs. Some of them, I want you to think about that. What kind of ID did they come with? Now they have a government ID that identifies them as a refugee living in the United States, and it's a state ID. You have paid for that with your tax dollars, and that enables them for your state and your state welfare system. They are now put in front of every American citizen living in your state to get welfare. And that every military person, they're ahead of them. And that just disgusts me right there. Okay. Irreparable harm. I'm going to keep going on that. A further burden occurs when, as refugees qualify for medical and refugee medical assistance. This, you would have thought that would be an interesting piece where that would take care of the medical issues. No, it's what the RMA doesn't pick up the majority of costs. It's just when the Medicaid doesn't cover it. Oh, and guess where Medicaid comes from? It's your state tax dollars. Education is compulsory in the United States. This creates an additional burden on taxpayers. The cost of educating students from non-English speaking countries is higher than those refugees who do speak English. Since non-English speakers are guaranteed instruction by a teacher of English of a second language, we call them TESOL or ESOL teachers, ESL teachers. Depending on the amount a person needs to learn, of English person needs to learn, this could require an awful lot of cash. You might need a translator to accompany a student. You might have to give your student one of these expensive phones so it can translate material for them. I've actually seen that in the classroom. Have you seen that, Eric?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. What this also does is it places an incredible burden on the teacher in the classroom, because these people, they're mainstreamed into your classroom. And I'm not saying that they should be mainstreamed into your classroom, but if the child, I've had kids in the classroom that were from, the main, these ESL teachers, the majority of them are Spanish speakers, and rightly so, because of the majority of the people that are coming into our country and going into the school systems are coming from Central South America where Spanish is spoken. But that they're not equipped to provide instruction and services to people. I've had a kid from North Korea a couple years ago in one of my classes. Did speak a lick of English when he got there. But the thing about kids is that they're resilient. They generally catch on pretty quickly as far as learning a new language. But the burden on the educational system in totality, because these ESL teachers, you only have like one per.
This is your local
school.
This is your local tax dollars. This is your school tax dollars. This is the cost. This raises the cost per education for a child. It can raise it as much as $3,000 or $4,000.
And on top of that, you have to provide them different, like if you let's say you have a handout. You have to provide it in their native language. So you have to go searching for this on the web. You have to find something for them to do in their language. And then when they fill it out, it takes a month to get it, to send it in, to get it graded. Find somebody that translated, especially if they're speaking, Korean, or let's say
how about
China.
Karen? I had someone who spoke Karen.
Spoke what?
Yeah, I think it's from, I think that's from a part of Indonesia, South Asia.
I've never heard of that. but you're absolutely right. It's just, it's an incredible burden on the school system and on the teachers itself to provide accommodation. And the thing is, let me just stress one more thing, Paul. It isn't that the teachers do not want to provide the services for these people or to try to help them. It's just that it causes an incredible amount of extra work on teachers who are already overburdened with the amount of work they have to do to begin with.
And this is what it comes down to is tax dollars are being spent on this And it's not federal tax dollars; it's your local tax dollars when we're talking about the schooling. Do they need to hire a translator? Do they need to give these kids special electronic devices? Do they need to be taught English? And all of this, even the teaching of English is for the adults is usually a burden on the school district. They are usually paid for by that part. Teaching the adults is generally paid for by the feds. But again, it is your local tax dollars that are paying for those teachers. They have to get reimbursed by the feds. So the immediate output, the immediate cost is from your local tax dollars. Again, this is something I've been researching this since 2015, I should say. And this is it adds up. It adds up quickly. This doesn't even take into account whether students are functioning on grade level or if they need special education services. Now, if your child is not on grade level, which, I mean, if you're coming from a country like Ukraine, my guess is they may be on grade level. You're coming from a country like Yemen. The concept of grade level may be entirely different. So, what's required we expect for a third grader is not the same thing that's expected of a third grader in Yemen. It's going to be different for each individual grade. How do we assess things, and how do they assess things? Did their child ever receive any special education services? I mean, again, this is where things get complex and we can't exactly know how much things will cost. And we haven't even talked about assessments of educational needs. I mean, so then now you have to talk for every SL child, they have to be evaluated. And that's an additional expense. And then they have to be evaluated at the end of the year. And this is extremely time consuming and expensive. I don't think people understand that. Again, school districts are the venue that provides a lot of this, and it's extremely, I'm not saying this is cheap, people. This is extremely expensive. Okay. The refugee resettlement state plans don't address who pays for them after 12 months. Now, this is important to understand. After 12 months, they become what is called a lawful permanent resident. This cost is necessarily passed off to the state taxpayer. So after 12 months, guess who's paying the bill? You are. Feds are done paying for them. The cost is necessarily passed off again, the state taxpayer. After 5 years of living in the United States, if they finish the naturalization process, they and have no requirement of if they should be able to get employed and all that. Then they can become a U.S. citizen. Standard practice for those coordinating state programs of refugee resettlement is to operate deceitfully, misinforming the public about the federal funds for refugees. They hold a press conference and they say, look, we've got a 5-year program, blah, 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 but they don't tell you they're only paying for the first 8 months of them being here in the United States. 8 months. Now, again, they're only considered refugees for 12 months by our law. So this is information you're not being told. They only give those refugees the TANF money for 8 months. And that money is so small. You get a family of, I sent out a FOIA to all 50 states. And some of them were giving families of $400 a month. And that's federal money. That's all they were getting. And this is a budget decided by your state of federal tax dollars. So this is one of the reasons why when the Somalis came here, a lot of them ended up going to states like Minnesota. They offered more money. So what they were doing is the Somalis were coordinating and finding out where you could get the most money and then going there. And that's the stuff that will probably start happening again. I haven't filed FOIAs on this for a while, but I have no doubt that the Ukrainians would do the same thing. And, all of a sudden the state is overburdened. There's no we don't have a requirement saying you know, until you become a citizen, we'd like you to stay in this area. We don't do that. So this can become problematic where one state picks up a majority of the burden. And you know, it's a sad, sorry truth. And I think that's it. Yes. Okay. It's kind of surprising. I bet most people are unaware of this. Were you surprised? Eric?
Well, I'm not. Well, to say I'm not surprised, because the local taxpayers, I've known that the immigration system rips the local taxpayers in the states off big time. They force these national policies that are developed by people in California, or majority of people, you know, wherever they have the most people in the House of Representatives, and they're passed through there, and then they're forced upon the smaller states like Iowa. And you know, there's places in our state here that we've had huge numbers of I'm not going to say which country, go into towns and literally become majorities within just a couple of years, because they keep coming. And then these towns are now forced to provide all of the educational services, all the medical services, and it bankrupts the town. And you know, these people are like, well, look, we had no say so. And all of these people being forced to, you know, they just dropped them off here. And now, you know, the property values, of course, plummet because the tax, you know, the tax base has been eaten up in providing services. So yeah, I knew it was. I didn't realize it was that bad, but I knew it was. I know it was bad.
I personally was shocked. I mean, all the stuff I've been told about. I mean, I have a friend who actually ran our local refugee resettlement program through the Catholic Family Services for a number of years, and he left. You can actually find it on the Sutliffian report. You go back a ways, I believe it's at least on BTR, the interview I did with Jim Delaney a ways back. He talks about one of the reasons he stopped, and it was due to refugees feeling entitled, that they were owed these rights and this money and everything. And rather than wanting to go out and join the culture that they came to, they wanted to remain separate and just receive benefits.
Right, balkanize themselves. Sure.
This is
well, it's kind of reminiscent of that Scarface scene where Tony Montana he's being interviewed by the INS agents or the immigration. He goes, "I want my rights right now." And so the entitlement mentality there is so true. I was having a conversation the other day when we were equating it to feeding birds, like in your backyard, because you feel sorry for them initially because it's cold and there's 3 feet of snow out there.
Don't feed them.
Okay, well, you want to throw. I'm not heartless. Okay, so you throw bird seed out there, and the birds are happy, and because they got. I'm getting to that, Rad. Give me a second time. So, and then the next thing you know, you're having to throw more bird seed out there because more birds are coming, and then after a while, they start fighting amongst each other because they can't handle the idea that they're getting free stuff. And then after they're done fighting with each other, they go up on your lawn furniture and start crapping all over the place. So it's kind of the same mentality where once you start giving away free stuff, it becomes this idea that you're entitled to free stuff. And then if you don't get it, then it's the other person's fault because they are, you know, you pick your pejorative, they're racist, they're something phobic, or they're a bigot or whatever. Because you don't look like them, and of course they don't want to give you anything because you don't look like them, and so it's absolutely ridiculous when you start seeing the entitlement mentality come in, just like you had with Tony Montana.
You know,
Well, I just want to chime in here real quick. I'm shocked that they get so little money. I think they get more money. They get grants from the UN. They get small business loans. They get all kinds of stuff, don't they? That's what I was always told.
well, the majority of their money, the majority of the money that goes towards refugees actually goes to these NGOs.
Yeah.
They don't go towards the refugees. The refugees themselves see very little of it.
And the NGOs are rich. Dude, seriously, we can start our own NGO. I'm looking into this. We can start our own charity and get all kinds of grant money, and we could do that. That would be great. Just exploit people.
You know, the sad, sorry truth is, I mean, here's an interesting site to go to, usaspending.gov. I recommend people go there, usaspending.gov, and you can see how the government is spending your money. Years ago, I was directed to this site by somebody working for the State Department because I sent a FOIA in asking for all, you know, how is the State Department spending our money towards things that have to do with Islam? And they said, well, we would be sending you truckloads of material if you did that. You're not being specific enough. I says, are you telling me the State Department sends that much money to things that have to do with Islam? They said, absolutely. And I mean, he went 18-wheeler trucks would have to be delivering stuff to me. And he says, why don't you just go to this site and look things up? And that was when I just started looking into things with FOIAs. That was one of my first eye openers. That's why I say go to usaspending.gov, do some searches there. They will just blow your mind. That was where I first learned about the DHS financing terrorism. And you can actually see documentation of it. They were financing CARE. CARE is Hamas in America. And you know, that's something to think about. They were giving them money to harden themselves against, well, who did they think was coming? President Trump. That's their reasoning for hardening themselves. They didn't come out and say it. The qualification was a requirement by the police department to say that they have been threatened. And I saw one of these applications that got approved. The police said, we haven't received any calls from them. Yet this was approved. This was a CARE Florida site. Mm-hmm. And they got, was it 20 grand? Yeah. And that was under Obama. Yeah.
Well, Hamas is that same organization that has received all those millions and millions of dollars to build schools, build hospitals, the cement company. And what do they do? What do they do with the money? They go out and they build these tunnels. Instead of building schools and hospitals, they build fortified tunnels with the cement that was given to them. Mm-hmm. For another purpose. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that the only we could do like 3,000 shows on on Hamas, and the only way that these people are going to be defeated is when people finally rise up. There has to be a civil war in Gaza in order to get rid of Hamas. That's the only way. That's the only way to do it. Of course, I don't
think you're going to have that happen because the ideology is filled with such hatred, and the only thing they can unite on is the Quran. And when you're taught hatred from the age of, this is the danger when you're taught hatred and from kindergarten.
Well, you're right. We saw those videos on Sunday of that kid. You're teaching them at such an early age to hate people based on their religion, and in doing so, but the point I was trying to make though is that the only way to get rid of these people is that you have enough sensible people, or hopefully there would be enough sensible people in Gaza to overthrow these guys. But like you said, when you're teaching your kids to hate Jews, how do you get enough people to do that? And
keep in mind
one thing that I did want to bring up on Sunday was what would happen if we allowed the Palestinians to be their own nation.
They would kill each other off.
Well, no, well, that's fine, but if they had to, but if they did become their own nation, and just as soon as they started launching them rockets into Israel, then you would have you would have to have worldwide condemnation, because now you have a recognizable nation with recognizable borders, with a recognizable government, a legitimate government, waging war, unprovoked war on another nation, and you would have to have the entire world come down on them and cut off start sanctioning them, and cutting off all of this gravy train of freebies given to them.
Well, and again, we're talking about freebies. The only electricity they get is from Israel. They don't have their own. The internet they get is from Israel. They don't have their own system.
And here we go back to don't feed the birds. That's Israel's fault. They should not be doing that, dude.
I agree with you.
You guys do your own stuff. We did this. The Jews did this while you guys were busy blowing stuff up. No, honestly, I remember I was talking to this on Pal Talk years ago, this Israeli, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't you just because I'm looking at their cities and everything. Well, they're the refugee camps, which are now cities, and I'm like, why don't you, develop their infrastructure? Blah blah blah. He said we tried that. We tried that in the 90s, or maybe it was the 80s. You know what they did? We would put in sewer lines, we'd put in electricity, they would tear it up the next day. And you know what? They would take the sewer lines, they would make rockets into them. How do they know? Because they get the serial numbers of the pipes on it.
Yes.
So, okay.
I've seen that.
No, but he said, no, we tried all that, okay? We tried to, develop their infrastructure. They would not allow it. They either took it or tore it up or just completely took the money and spent it on something else. No. So that's kind of thing. In other words, dude, Israel just said say total disengagement. Just you're on your own. Okay? That's it. Boom. And then you'll see how quickly things change. Well,
the only saving grace is that other Muslim majority countries are starting to see them for what they are. And they themselves are. This is what the Abraham Accords was what's enabled the Abraham Accords.
Well, Egypt has recognized this for decades. This is why they closed the door on the Gaza Strip. They don't let them in, and that's something to think about. Egypt is a majority Muslim country today, and they're not. There is times they close the door and won't let them in. So that's how trusting they are of the people who live in these areas. And
the same thing with Jordan. Jordan won't let them into their country either.
Well, the real sad part, though, is it's the Jordanians, it's the Egyptians, it's the Iraqis, it's the Saudis. It's the ones that fueled all this hatred. They are the ones that said no, because they had no interest in a Palestinian state. Okay, in 1947, 48, or even in the 50s. One thing that Yasser Arafat did do is he invented the Palestinian cause. Because before that, it was just the Arab cause. In other words, Egypt wanted its little part, Jordan wanted its little part, Iraq wanted its little part, so on and so forth, right? Okay, or Syria wanted their little part, okay? Anyway, so they created this thing. They actually have, this is historical documentation, radio transmissions, newspapers, saying, get out of the way of our bullets. Flee your homes, oh Palestinians or Arabs or whatever they were calling them at the time, because they weren't calling them Palestinians. Oh Muslims, flee your homes. Don't worry, we're not here for booty. We'll let you come back to your land and we'll share in the spoils and the booty.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was the days before the 6-Day War. Yeah. They
exactly. Yeah, so they totally caused this thing. Okay, and not only that, so when they flee to lands that are occupied by Jordan, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, etc., well, guess what they did to these poor people? They said, okay, you're refugees now. You lost your land to the Jews. You can't work. Actually, well, it's starting to ease up a little bit, in the late 2000s or early 2000s, where in Jordan, in Lebanon, something like that, there were over 27 professions a Palestinian refugee could not work in. Doctors, nurses, construction workers. They were reduced to just basically menial labor I mean, no, they could work construction, but they could not be a foreman. You know what I mean? They could not advance. Okay, but there, I think 27 jobs. I'll have to look that up, make sure that's accurate. But yeah, no, they were forbidden by law from working on that, and they were kept up in these refugee camps that later turned out to be cities. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No opportunity. Yeah. Anyway.
So what we used to do, I mean, my family came here 400 years ago. So my family came on the second Mayflower. And most people who came not as refugees, but as, I would say even refugees, up through to even through the 80s, when you came here, one of the things about the American dream that we used to teach is you can become anything. You just have to apply yourself. So people like me have gone to school. Well, I've got my undergraduate, I've got my graduate, I've got a graduate certificate on top of that. Some people get their PhDs. Some people go and get a medical degree. Some people, it's all what you want to do. Some people who like to work with their hands can end up, owning huge businesses because that's what they're good at and they're talented. But again, it has to do with how you apply yourself. When you're only looking for a handout, I'm going to say America's not the place for you because you can't handle this system. This system is based on how much you want to give of yourself, not how much you want to take. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, well, I would say that a lot of the immigration that's going on today, before you were expected to assimilate into the culture.
That's actually a word that's actually been removed from our refugee resettlement program.
Right. Yeah. And assimilation is no longer the expectation. And that is, and it's always taken a generation or two to assimilate. And we do see it to an extent in the later generations where people are learning the language and they're obeying the laws and they're getting the education and they're trying to do the right thing. But when you have as much immigration as we do today, for an example, 1 out of every 3 people that are living in the United States today, if I might be wrong on this, and I'm willing to be wrong on this, but my understanding is 1 out of 3 people that are living in the United States today was not born here.
I would say those odds would fit my church a large majority. I'd say a large amount of my church is from Africa. It's from different countries. We have somebody from India, we have them from all over, and yeah,
right. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That
no, these people all work.
Right.
It's a different thing.
But if you're willing to assimilate to our culture,
yes.
you can bring your culture and your practices into the country and practice them, but do not force them upon the standard of the rest of the population. And this is what I think what a lot of people are missing, because they say that we're this melting pot, and indeed we are. We're the most multicultural, multi-ethnic society in the history of the world today. But we do have this common culture, where we respect the rule of law. We follow what the Constitution teaches as far as the treatment of others and respecting the rights of other people, and engaging in everyday commerce and not expecting the government to keep forking money over to you, where you're required to actually fork your hard-earned money over to the government in the form of taxes. So this is where people need to learn to assimilate to our culture. And most people, but I would say a good majority of them do. But there's this very vocal minority that does not. And it causes all kinds of concern for the rest of us.
Yeah. Red, any last words? Darcy?
Yeah. Well, real quick here. Yeah, I just wanted to say, let's go, Brandon. Just wanted to say that. All right, cool.
Darcy, any last words? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
No.
This is a Christian news show, so I'm just gonna end with saying this: the goal here is not to say don't come here. The goal here is to say, look, Our God taught us that if you don't work, you don't eat. That's what it says in the Bible. If you don't work, you don't eat. It's on you. You have to get out there and provide for yourself and for your family. You have to do your best. I understand, we understand that there are people who have difficulty doing that. And that's when you start to, when you have those needs, that your family is supposed to be able to help you there. And then there's other agencies that should be able to help. But it's time, as a Christian news show, I think it's time that we have to be aware of how our tax dollars are being spent. Is it being frivolous when we're offering hundreds of thousands of dollars to help people that aren't even part of our country? We just can't financially keep that up. And I just don't consider that financially wise. It's nice to offer shelter, but you have to be able to do that financially. And if you can't, and you're already deep in debt, then you're digging your own hole. God bless you all. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Good night.
God bless you.
Good night.